Alright, hello. So today I'm talking about 5 common, myths that you hear in regards to autism. That took me a really long time to get out, but we're gonna go with it. So obviously there are countless amounts of wrong information or misinformation or just ignorant things being spewed out about autism, and not mostly everything, but we're just focusing on autism today. So I just picked 5, and just the ones that I guess irk me the most, because obviously there's the one about that autism comes from shots and needles and that kind of stuff, and honestly, if somebody thinks that, I think of them kind of as a lost cause. If you can't even get that elementary baseline stuff down and you really fucking believe that, and you're a fucking idiot who refuses to know anything else, I get it, maybe people are just wrongly informed, but even when I knew nothing about autism, and I first thought I was, and somebody mentioned there was I first heard that myth that it was caused by a shot or something, I was like, no, isn't that baseline autism knowledge that it's just something you're born with? I knew nothing about autism, and yet I was smart enough to know, duh, it's not caused by that, just by common sense. Anyways, so these ones are the ones that I think that I'll hear more from in real life or online or just blah, 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 blah. More from people that you have higher expectations for. Not even higher expectations, but just they do know some, but there's just something that they're missing, These are the more advanced ones, right? I don't know if that's true. The first one that I just want to start off with is in all honesty, it's any generalization. And I have an issue with generalizations with anybody, anytime, anywhere, but there's a big thought process kind of, I don't know what the word is, there's a gap, okay? If you're neurotypical, they know, well, we're all different, right? Me, neurotypical Jim versus neurotypical John down the hall are 2 completely different people, and just because Tom's messy doesn't mean that Jim is gonna be, right? Everybody gets that. But for some reason, that logic doesn't translate into the autistic community when neurotypicals think of it. They're like, oh, my autistic friend Sam from high school was a really neat person, they kept their desk tidy, right? So then autistic Sally must also keep her desk tidy because, they're both on the spectrum, so they must be the same. No, the same thing applies, that just because you met one autistic person, you met one autistic person, right? We say that all the time. And the same goes for neurotypical. Just because you met one neurotypical person doesn't mean you've met all neurotypical people. So why doesn't this knowledge translate? Why does there some kind of gap? Obviously everybody's different. One depressed person isn't the same as the other depressed person. Everybody is so different, and within the realm of autism we are also different. Of course we have these common traits that link us together in some way, but that does not mean that I'm gonna get along with every autistic person that I meet, and that also doesn't mean that a neurotypical is going to get along with every neurotypical that they meet, or intermingled, or it's just everybody is an individual, and I think that people really fucking forget that when it comes to autism and other things, right? We just kind of forget that, and we like to generalize as a society, but anyways, so I just wanted to clear that up, because that fucking bothers me. The second one that really irks me, because I've heard it from a lot of people, and yeah, not to throw anyone under the bus here. Honestly, I'm just gonna say, this goes as close as my parents, if you're watching, and it does make me very uncomfortable. Let's take an example of somebody is obviously not autistic, but they can relate to one of the traits of autism. They're wow, yeah, I totally understand this whole special interest thing. I get super into stuff too, unreasonably into stuff. Sure, I don't have all this other stuff, but I have this one thing, so maybe I'm slightly autistic, or, oh, I have an autistic trait, or it's just any kind of thing where where people insinuate that you can be half autistic. The thing about autism is, if you look at the traits individually, social awkwardness, sensitivity to light, special interest. Like that's sort of 3 an example, right? You know, a neurotypical can have any one of the traits of autism. In fact, I think it's more likely that as a neurotypical, you probably will have one of the traits or can relate to something that autistic people can relate to, like social anxiety. A lot of people have social anxiety and they can really relate to that part of autism. But the whole point of autism is that it's not just a trait. It's when you have these specific traits all together kind of situation, right? So saying I'm slightly autistic, that's not a thing. That doesn't exist, because that just means that you're a person who has traits and one of them falls on the autism spectrum. Like, I can look at bipolar disorder and say, you know, yeah, like I have 2 of these traits, but I don't relate to the other 5 at all. I must be slightly bipolar. Like, no, there are just some traits with bipolar and autism that kind of overlap. It doesn't mean that I'm slightly bipolar. There's no such thing, right? So it bothers me because I hear this a lot. And I think that it's very normal. And that's not me trying to say like, oh, you don't relate to anything. Because I think it's honestly more realistic that everybody does maybe find 1, 2 of the traits, 3, whatever, relatable, and some people don't, you know what I mean? But that just goes to the fact that we're all different. But the whole point that I'm trying to make, autism equals the combination of these specific traits. You know, it's this mixed with this mixed with this equals autism. But if you take one of those out that's not autism, it's probably something else, which is why, you know, we're so often misdiagnosed, because some of our traits fall into something else, right? But the whole point of autism is that it's this plus this plus this plus this. You know, I'm just making shit up. But I think you're getting what I'm saying. I mean, I don't know. I'm just talking to a camera, but kind of reliving what I just said makes sense in my brain, so hopefully it's the connection that we're making here. Okay, the next thing that Anna Moomin did a video on, or Dynamite Jet Moom on Instagram, right? She just made this video of like, oh, but you don't look autistic. I'll link that down below because that covers this obviously a lot more in depth. But yeah, you don't look autistic. Like, there's some kind of way to look. Like, autism just has nothing to do with how you look. I mean, maybe it does have something in your facial structure, but other than that, that's pretty much it. I've read some things where it's like, oh, a lot of autistic people have this or this kind of face, but I honestly didn't really relate to it, so I don't even know how much validity there is in that. But there's no way to look autistic. And I understand, honestly, I don't put this on people that much at all. I put this really heavily on the media more than anything, because definitely autism is portrayed as something that only, you know, like white males, like white little boys, I should say, not just white males, white little boys kind of are the only people that are portrayed as having autism. And then there's also that stereotype that like autistic people don't care about the way that they look or this and that, but like this just goes back to the fact that like every autistic person is different, and the fact that I like to dress up sometimes, or I like to do my makeup, or this and that, has nothing to do with my autism. In fact, me wanting to dress up is a special interest, and it's also a blank because of my autism. Like, it's an effect. Like, autism is the cause, the effect is me dressing up. So if anything, it's even more related to me having autism as to why I like to dress up. But then that doesn't mean that it goes with everyone by any means. The person, you know, down the hall that has autism, which I highly doubt, but who knows, maybe. Hit me up if you're down the hall and you have autism. Get some random knock on my door and I'm like, hello, and they're like, hi, and I'm like, I should have known. Anyways, I'm in a super weird mood. Autism does not equal good grooming or bad grooming, or does not equal you care about how you look or you don't, does not equal everybody with autism wears color and everybody without autism does. Like, it's like one neurotypical likes to get dressed in the morning and the other one doesn't. Like, it's the same shit. It's the same thing. It's just, it has nothing, the way we look has nothing to do with autism, and like, autism does not affect that, and it doesn't, I mean, if it affects anything, it's the fact that like, it's really fucking hard getting eyeliner wings straight when you're autistic, because it's that like, trying to see that balance, some kind of perception thing. I remember Sarah Mills talked about this, and she said it's so hard for her to get her wings straight, and I was like, I relate to that so hard. I struggled so much with winged liner. I didn't do it for so long, but I wanted to, because I couldn't figure out, like, I can't tell if they're straight. Like, they're probably really not straight right now, but I will never know. Like, even if I just stare at myself for a year and a half, I will never fucking know if my wings are straight or not. So now I've just kind of gotten over it and do it anyways. But that's the only thing that really has to do with autism. And You can be any skin tone to have autism. You could be any gender. You could be anything is what I'm trying to say. And still have autism. Okay. Number 4 is that nobody on the spectrum wants to have a lot of friends, is social. They're happy being alone at all times. That's what they want. They isolate themselves because they don't want friends. Which, doesn't that just sound wrong? And again, this goes back to like nobody on the spectrum is the same. Like, you can't generalize. When I say it, it just sounds wrong. Like, oh, they isolate themselves only because they don't want any friendship or companionship of any kind and they're happy like that. No, I think it comes from a few different things. Well, first of all, I would like to say as a bunch, more than likely we are more antisocial than other people, or we just enjoy our alone time more than neurotypicals. I definitely think that's a trait of autism. We just need time to recharge from people, and I think as a whole, we all really enjoy being alone because our minds really run rampant and we're just fun, like, to ourselves. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like when I'm alone, it's just like my mind goes crazy. I want to do all these things by myself and I get to be free and have all the fun in the world, and I don't have to go by anybody else's schedule or timetable. I'm not judged at all and I can do my own thing, right? So I think that there's validity in the fact that we need more alone time and we are less social, but that doesn't mean that we don't want friends, that we don't want companions. Like, I've always been somebody who my friends take extreme high precedent in my life. Like, they matter very much to me, and I really like hanging out with my friends. I do like being around people. I think that difference lies in we just find it harder to connect to people because, you know, we're on the spectrum and most people aren't, and we just are very different. And not only do we find that they don't like us because we weird them out, but like we also don't really like them a lot of times. I know for me, I've been having a lot of struggles because I've realized how few people I actually like in the world and how few people I actually want to get to know. But when I do find somebody, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to find anybody that I want to know or that I want to be with or that I want a friend or I want company with. That doesn't mean that. It just means like I'm kind of gotten to this point where I'm tired of settling since I've gotten out of school, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to settle for friends that I don't fully want to be around or be in situations where I don't really want to be around. I think a lot of autistic people feel this at like an earlier time, but I kind of forced myself to be more social for a lot of my life. We'll go out, right, and we'll be like, we fucking hate everybody in this room except for one person, and we find ourselves being like, I'd rather just spend time with this one person that I actually care about, and I also don't want to spend 24/7 with them, but I do want to spend time with them. Or, you know, we're out at an event and we just find that we can't relate to anybody. We feel uncomfortable. We feel uncomfortable going up to anybody, approaching anybody. We don't know how to do that whole social dance. So it's more comfortable for us to just kind of hang out around the sidelines. And it's not because we want to. A lot of times we probably wish somebody would approach us, but we just are too scared to approach them. We don't, you know, it's just a lot of times people on the spectrum are only antisocial because they don't have any other choice. They don't feel comfortable enough to approach people and they can't find anybody that they relate with, so they're kind of forced to be antisocial. So thinking, oh, they do that because they want to, like, they kind of do it out of a necessity. And then the last one that really rubs me in a different way. I don't know why. These all like annoy me. Yeah, but I know, but this one is like, they all kind of are, actually. What am I saying? This one activates something different in me than the rest of these do, because the other ones I'm like, you're stupid, but this one I'm like, is that we lack empathy, right? This is fucking huge, and I've done a lot of videos that have to do with this. Like, if you want me to expand more, I'm just going to touch on this briefly, but I have a whole video on alexithymia that really doubles as a video as to like why autistic people lack empathy, or some of them seem to, and there are a ton of videos out there about this. But it's not that we don't lack empathy, it's that, in fact, if you talk to autistic people, you realize that we're way more empathetic than most people. Because we're hyper aware of it, because we can't read the emotional signals that people give. If somebody's giving like a physical signal of like, oh, I'm sad, like they're whatever it is that people do when they're sad, I still don't fucking know. We're not gonna know unless they tell us. So we're gonna seem as unempathetic. We're gonna seem like we don't give a fuck about that person, and they're gonna be like, why are they asking me if I'm okay? But it's like, because you haven't said any verbal like anything verbal to say, oh, I am sad. And then we could go, oh my God, you're sad. Oh, and then it all comes rushing to us. But until you give us that like verbal thing, like I am happy, I am sad, this hurt me, this did that, like we don't know unless we're told, because we can't read those body language. Or even if you're telling us in a roundabout way, we can't read that roundabout way. If you're trying to give us signals, if you're trying to leave little things, like we don't pick up on that. So of course we're seen as though we don't have empathy, but that's just because we can't put ourselves in your shoes. We can't read your language. We can't snuff out things. We can't see any other side other than our own, and we try to really hard. My fucking camera loves to cut out when I'm like really getting into it. Yes, so we don't like empathy. We just are unable to recognize things a lot of times, and then also we're not very good at showing our emotions on our face, especially if you have alexithymia. It's really fucking hard. You have to actually like work to show emotion, and even though you feel it just might not seem like it. So we're extremely empathetic because we tend to, not all of us, but a lot of people on the spectrum will overcompensate for the fact that they're unaware. I know I do this. I really overcompensate for the fact that I'm unaware of other people's emotions, other people's feelings. There's always something that I'm unsure of. I don't know if I'm getting everything. So I tend to overcompensate kind of more on the inside, and just be so hyper aware. Try to be hyper aware of what the other person's feeling, or if they do express that, like, especially if something that I'm doing is hurting them, or even if something that somebody else is doing that is hurting them, it really, really fucks me up. And I mean, even my therapist will be like, you need to like breathe, like it's okay, like you don't have any mean spirit, because like I said, like maybe some people on the spectrum aren't very empathetic. Like some neurotypicals aren't empathetic, some autistic people aren't very empathetic, and there are neurotypicals out there that are so sensitive and so caring and so, you know, giving and kind and aware of everybody else's emotions, to maybe too much. And there are also the people on the spectrum that are that way. We just show it differently because it's a different experience, and just everybody's different, and just don't judge people based on my little life. But like, my God, people just, and I'm generalizing by being like, people generalize. Whatever, okay, and that's all I have to say. Calm down. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know, please, in the comments, leave a story about like some kind of generalization that people put on you, or something that you've encountered, or just some kind of story about this anytime that people have kind of put judgment upon you because you're on the spectrum, or just honestly because of any reason, just any kind of stereotype or something like that. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you whenever I see you. Who knows when that'll be. Bye!